What do you think of the jumper? So, jumper today instead of an edgy rock band t-shirt. Anyway, welcome to Dave's Faves, one of a series of videos. It might be number 19, but it's a series of videos where what I do is I pick out 2, 3, 4 or 5 albums from my collection that I want to recommend and that have meant something in particular to me over the years. So today I'm going to talk about 2 artists, both very, very different, but both made some great albums and memorable albums. So the first one is, well, we'll come to the album. The first artist is Southside Johnny and the Asbury Jukes. Now, Southside Johnny was one of the compatriots of, or contemporaries of Bruce Springsteen in New Jersey, Asbury Park, New Jersey. And one of the great things about Southside Johnny was that his music was close enough to Springsteen to kind of be recognizable. You could see the fit between the two, but Southside had much more of a soul feel to his music and a more soulful voice, in fact. And if you're a Springsteen fan and you know 10th Avenue Freeze Out, or from Born to Run, where you get that horn arrangement that I believe was devised by Stevie Van Zandt, Little Steven. You get a sense of what Southside Johnny's music is. So it's kind of very soulful. It's got a little bit of guitar, but what's really recognizable is that soul feel that comes from the horn section. That's very, very strong. And if you're once again, if you're a Springsteen fan and you like the latest Springsteen album, his Only the Strong Survive, his album of covers from the 60s, 70s, and 80s by kind of soul classics, you get something closer to the Southside Johnny sound. But I will just add that Southside Johnny's horn sound was a whole lot punchier than anything else that I've mentioned so far. He was never a great songwriter, was Southside Johnny. So he relied very much on the songwriting abilities of Miami Steve Van Zandt, and to a degree early on, but not always early on, from Springsteen himself. So I first discovered Southside Johnny because I got into Springsteen in the late 1970s after a friend of mine lent me Darkness on the Edge of Town, and I went back and Born to Run and The Wildly Innocent A Street Shuffle and Greetings from Asbury Park. And I was kind of searching around for other stuff that was just as pleasurable, just as enjoyable. And as I learned about Springsteen, I realised that he was writing some songs for Southside Johnny. And I bought this compilation, Having a Party with Southside Johnny. Now, this was a mid-price compilation from CBS. There's the back cover. There's nothing going on inside, just a simple white inner. But you've got I Don't Want to Go Home, written by Stephen Van Zandt. Broke Down Piece of Man, Talk to Me, written by Springsteen. Love on the Wrong Side of Town, again written by Springsteen. The Fever, I'll come back to The Fever. Trapped Again, Without Love, When You Dance. This time it's for real, and Sam Cooke's having a party. Look at the band there. Look at that band. So that's a bit of a little mini army there, with all that horn section in there. So yeah, produced by Stephen Van Zandt. So he was producing all those early albums for Southside. Anyway, I picked up that one and I thought, well, that's really, really great. It cost about £3 at the time, I think I recall. But then it led me to investigate the individual albums. And the first album of Southside Johnny was I Don't Want to Go Home. And this has a little bit of some liner notes here from Springsteen himself. But this has got Little Steven, Miami Steve Van Zandt, all over it. He produces it, he writes several of the songs, he writes the title track, I Don't Want to Go Home. And it's interesting, for me, that song, the last time I heard it, prior to playing the Having a Party album just a couple of days ago, I heard it at the end of a match at Newcastle United St James's Park. Newcastle had come out winners, and as they were leaving the field, the DJ or the compere for the stadium, who makes all the announcement, the announcer even, he played I Don't Want to Go Home. And it's great to hear it. You know, the stadium's got 52,000 people in it, blasting out loud, absolutely fantastic. So I Don't Want to Go Home, Solomon Burke's Got to Get You Off My Mind, the best version of The Fever, Bruce Springsteen's The Fever. He wrote that around the time of Darkness on the Edge of Town, but the version here with the horns is absolutely brilliant, and Springsteen himself has never got close. And also Sweeter Than Honey by Steve Van Zandt, and the album closes with another Springsteen song, You Mean So Much to Me, which has the 60s soul singer Ronnie Spector co-singing the lead with Southside Johnny. Yeah, great album, great album. That's not the album I'm recommending though. The second album, I can't find my vinyl copy, but I've got a CD version here, which is this one here. This time it's for real. It's the same story. Little Steven writing the songs, producing. The title track. What else have we got in here that's really, really great? Love on the Wrong Side of Town, which is a co-write between Springsteen and Steve Van Zandt. When You Dance, which is on that compilation as well. Having a Party, again, a co-write between Springsteen and Van Zandt. So another great album. But the album that I definitely want to recommend is Southside Johnny's third album, Hearts of Stone. This is an absolute classic. It's it's full of energy and it's punchy. The rhythm section is tight as a drum, pardon the pun, and the horn section is really precise and dynamic. There's lots of highs and lows going on, and there's not a bad track on this album. You've got a great fast opening with Got to Be a Better Way Home. Then my personal favourite, This Time Baby's Gone for Good. I think that one's a Stephen Van Zandt composition. I Played the Fool. The ballad Hearts of Stone from Springsteen, which he does a decent version himself on his Darkness on the Edge of Town box set that was released a few years ago. But this version by Southside is better. It's definitely better. Take It Inside, brilliant horns that are really, flying, really, absolutely fantastic. Springsteen's Talk to Me, again, Southside does a better job. Next to You, Trapped Again, and another ballad to close the album, The Light Don't Shine No More. The Light Don't Shine. Again, produced and arranged by Stevie Van Zandt. Once Little Steven left, I mean, if you know Springsteen's E Street Band, you know that Little Steven was the kind of rhythm guitarist, or occasionally lead guitarist, alongside Springsteen in the E Street Band, and he decided to leave. I think it's after the River album. I've just read his book, his autobiography here. I've just finished this one here, and the impression that I've got was that he wanted to strike out on his own. He was kind of the right-hand man, kind of the foil on stage for Springsteen's kind of antics, and always laughing along. And you'll know that he came back into the E Street Band from around about 1999 onwards, and has been a member of the band ever since. And he was really at the heart of that Asbury Park music scene, and when you read the book, you realise that his tentacles were all over the place, into everything, and then eventually, of course, you'll know him from The Sopranos, and I didn't watch the series Lilyhammer because I think it was on Netflix, and I don't have Netflix, but he's been really right behind Southside Johnny, right from the very, very beginning. But when he left the A Street Band and struck out on his own, made a great first solo album, Men Without Women, his involvement with Southside was much less, and then non-existent. And Southside music began to falter until there was a kind of a reunion type album, which was called Better Days, that came along in 1991. And again, this is little Steven Van Zandt produces it. It's almost like his album, but with Southside on vocals, and Southside's a great singer. So you've got, it's all written by Steven Van Zandt, with the exception of All the Way Home, which is a great song by Bruce Springsteen, which is the second last song. But it's got Coming Back opens the album. It's brilliant. It's Been a Long Time, Better Days, The Right to Walk Away, and closes with Shake 'Em Down. So little Steven's been all over the place. It's a good autobiography, but interestingly, at least for me, was that the early years were the most interesting, and it's one of the few autobiographies I've read where I liked the person less at the end of the book than I did at the beginning. Go figure. Anyway, I saw Southside only once, sadly, without the horn section. He did a tour in the 90s in the UK, or presumably the rest of Europe as well, where it was labelled Southside Johnny in the acoustic. And so he kind of, it's probably the MTV unplugged thing, feeding into the design of the tour. And of course, it's a lot cheaper to tour with a handful of people rather than a 9-piece band or whatever it was at its peak. And I think what Little Steven sometimes talks about that in the autobiography as well, is that the economics of trying to tour with a big band is pretty hard to do unless you've got some serious sponsorship. And he was only able to do it again himself when he resurrected his own solo band, the Disciples of Soul, and they toured Europe in 2017, I think, and they came with a full horn section, which was amazing, really great. He's a great songwriter, and those Southside Johnny albums, and particularly Hearts of Stone, it's full of melody and great lyrics as well. So little Steven Van Zandt is a tremendous songwriter. And Southside Johnny, whatever success he's had, and it's been very limited outside the USA and probably basically New Jersey, whatever success he's had, he owes it to Miami Steve Van Zandt. So anyway, Hearts of Stone, heartily recommended. Completely different is this artist. Now, Little Steven and the Disciples of Soul, Little Steven himself is a confirmed or an avowed Democrat. He's been involved in politics a lot since the 1980s. And right at the opposite end of the political spectrum is this bloke, Ted Nugent. Ted Nugent. Now, Ted Nugent, I don't know whether you follow him. He is a gun-toting, hunting Republican, but actually more of a libertarian. He's a really interesting character, and he's like Marmite. People either love him or hate him. Although having said that, I don't either love him or hate him. I kind of somewhere sit in the middle. He's got very, very outspoken views on hunting and resisting gun control laws, which the Democratic Party in the United States continue to push. And there are merits of that and some shortcomings, but I'm not here to discuss Ted Nugent's politics. But regardless, it's kind of hard to ignore. Now, I've seen Ted Nugent about 3 times. The last time purely out of curiosity to see whether he could still cut it around the age of, late 60s. I guess he must have been. And I went along to this gig with my brother, and it was just astonishing how energetic he still was, and how he could still hold an audience. Absolutely tremendous showman. Now, he is very much a show off. There's no question about it. One of the things that you kind of remember, a couple of things that I remember from the first show, which was in the late 1970s at Newcastle City Hall. And I think the support band was a name band. I think it was Stiff Little Fingers, the punk band from Northern Ireland. I could be wrong there. My memory might not serve me that reliably on this occasion. But it was a great night out. So 2 great bands. But 2 things that you remember of that I always remember of Ted Nugent. One is that even though he's a hard rock icon, in his early years, he had the Amboy Dukes as his band, and that's more psychedelic. But I didn't really pick up on that until much later, and it's never really meant that much to me anyway, that stuff. But one of the things that 2 things. The first one is that for a hard rocker, he has great sound on stage, and it's all very, very controlled. He's got great precision in his guitar playing. It's not just riffage. He picks out the notes, and they come across as very, very precise. So it's very controlled, and it's enjoyable. You don't get that distortion that you get with a lot of bands in the hard rock vein. In the sheer volume, he was quite happy, and I think remains quite happy to take the sound right down and still create an impression that it's very, very very musical, and not just riffage, as I've said. But the second thing is that you come away with an impression that he's funny, and I think his humour is a guilty pleasure for people who don't approve of his politics, and it's beautifully demonstrated on his live album Double Live Gonzo, where he's got this rapid fire speaking between the songs, which is hugely provocative, but funny as hell. So as long as you don't take him too seriously, and I don't think he necessarily takes himself too seriously, as long as you don't, you can kind of have a bit of a laugh. But anyway, I'm not recommending Double Live Gonzo. The album I'm recommending is his solo debut, Ted Nugent. This came out mid-70s, 75, literally, 1975. And it's on the CBS label, or the Epic label. Back in the day when I used to cut bits out of magazines and stick them to the inner sleeves. So yeah, had this album since 1975. Probably heard a couple of the tracks on the Alan Freeman Saturday Rock Show. Maybe buy the album, because I can't think of another reason why I would have bought the album, because he's, I wasn't much of a hard rocker back in those days, and even less so today. But anyway, I picked this album up, and it opens with what is a genuine bona fide rock classic, which is Stranglehold. And Stranglehold, I think, is 8 minutes and 22 seconds of kind of languid, slow guitar picking, very, very tuneful, very, very tuneful guitar playing, and it's 8 minutes. Like I say, it's just over 8 minutes, and it passes just like in an instant. And it's got this beautiful, precise, musical, melodic guitar figures running through the middle of it in particular, and then it has a series of climaxes that kind of blow you away, really. So it's really, really great rock classic, and it's followed by Stormtroopin', which is more of a mid-paced rock track. Great riffage in that one as well. very, very memorable. I think he still plays these songs even today when he does his shows. He's in his 70s now, but he's still performing. Hey Baby is the third track, which is more of a bluesy song, kind of more mainstream, less of his personality in it, as I recall. And I like it these days, but it really, at the time in the 70s, I think the song was definitely overshadowed by the tracks that were around it. Just What the Doctor Ordered is kind of a mid to fast pace, great song. And Motor City Madhouse on side 2 is also kind of goes back to his Michigan roots. And the rest of the stuff on side 2 is not so interesting. But Stranglehold and Stormtrooping are worth the price of admission alone, as people often say. He plays with this Gibson Birdland guitar, which I'm not a guitarist, so I don't know. But one of the things I kind of understand about this is that it's open bodied and it's heavy, and it's got a very different tone to the regular Fender Strat and so on. So he's got this really unique sound, and he's always paying homage to the Funk Brothers, the band that was behind, I believe, is it the Motown hits back in the day, and he's always kind of paying homage to them and other bands and guitarists of the late 50s, early 60s as being very influential. And what I like about this particular album, Ted Nugent, self-titled solo album, is that in addition to everything I've said so far, the use of space, his music is not congested, it's not overproduced, it's recorded very, very well. The drum sound is great on this album, so the drums are really punchy, and there's loads of space around the instruments, so to me it's timeless. Now, sure, if you know Ted Nugent, hit his peak in the mid-late 1970s with this, his second solo album, Free For All, which had Meatloaf on it as singing some of the tracks, Dog Eat Dog. Oh, I lost my way at this point because I mentioned Dog Eat Dog, and Dog Eat Dog as an album, and Dog Eat Dog was, in fact, as you probably know, it was a track on Free For All. The third solo album was Cat Scratch Fever, and that was the one that was very recognisable by many rock fans. Anyway, back to the video. In the mid-late 1970s with this, his second solo album, Free For All, which had Meatloaf on it as singing some of the tracks, Dog Eat Dog, the title track of that album that followed Free For All was also great, and almost kind of a pop feel as well, but with hard rock. And then of course Double Live Gonzo. But this particular album, I kind of that's from the mid-late 1970s, but it sounds timeless. It just sounds just as dynamic and as punchy and as fun today as it was even back in the day. So that's my second recommendation today. It's for the solo album, the first solo album by Ted Nugent. So I know most people won't, I know a lot of people won't like me recommending a Ted Nugent album because of his politics, but if you can get past that and just listen to the music just for itself, you've got two fantastic bands and two brilliant albums in Hearts of Stone by Southside Johnny and Ted Nugent, and I heartily recommend both of them. So that's it for today. I thought I'd better get on and do some videos about music again at the beginning of this new year, 2023. So here it is. Just one final word, I suppose. We've heard this morning that David Crosby died yesterday, aged 81, after a long illness. And they're dropping like flies now, aren't they? The rock stars of the 60s and the 70s. And I'm readying myself for some even more famous, worldwide famous singers biting the dust in 2023. But it's not going to be long before they're all going to be like those of the rock and roll era. They're going to be gone, and it's going to be for people on YouTube primarily to try and keep their memories alive. So yeah, sad but not unexpected that David Crosby has finally died. He's been prolific in the last few years, trying to produce as much music as he possibly can before he goes. And there's, I think, one album, Cross, that was released. I've got that one on vinyl sitting around somewhere here. Great album. His voice was still fantastic, you know, right up until close to the end. So yeah, sad but not unexpected. Anyway, that's my video for today, and thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you on the next video. Cheers. All the best.